Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, the healthcare leadership podcast where we explore leadership with purpose. I'm Naji, your host, joined today by Selin Kurnaz, CEO and co-founder of Massive Bio, a health tech company improving access to cancer clinical trials through AI and data-driven solutions. Selin holds a PhD in mechanical engineering and brings over a decade of experience in life sciences strategy and operations. Inspired by her family's cancer journey, Selin launched Massive Bio in 2015 to make cutting-edge treatments more accessible, particularly in underserved communities. Under her leadership, the company has onboarded over 160,000 patients and built a global network of sites, partners, and advocates. Selin is also a recognized voice for women in tech and digital health innovation. It is so great to see you again, Selin, and have you with me today.
Thank you so much, Naji, for having me. It's a wonderful opportunity to talk to you today.
I'd love to first hear more about your personal story and how it links to this great, inspiring work you're doing.
Yeah, so frankly, in my personal story, I was not that kind of a kid on a lemonade stand and I'm going to be the entrepreneur of all time. So the story has started with a much more well-structured and planned story. You know, for those of us that has been grow up in outside the United States, you know, if you're smart, you need to go into science. And then if you go into science, there's a certain level of a career paths that you have to follow. So my story was in that one, you know, I studied engineering and go into a traditional route of working in a large and respected company. But while I was going through that, you know, I became exposed to private equity and the world of investment. And I very much liked that. And then I was in process of opening up my own growth equity fund and investing companies at different growth stages. And it was a very well planned, very well articulated career path. And that was also very much supported to my upbringing and everything that my family thought that I have a job and that job is delivering its purpose with the financial freedom and so on and so forth. But then once the family hit with the world of cancer, everything has changed because historically I was just trying to think this is going to be like a side thing in addition to my job, because coming to United States, going to PhD, going into that layers in the private equity, it took so much effort, so much, you know, resilience. And I had a very well articulated plan, but then taking that entire plan, putting it aside was absolutely very crazy thought for me. And I said, okay, let me try to do this thing as a, you know, a hobby or a side job, try to fix certain things. But at, you know, 6 months after, I have recognized that I was significantly underestimating the amount of work, the amount of stamina, the amount of everything that you need to do to change even a minute thing in the world of healthcare. And after I get that enlightening moment, then I said, okay, this is not going to be a hobby or a part-time job. Then I have to put my everything into helping cancer patients to get access to clinical trials or anything beyond that. Then I left my job at Ernst & Young, which I was very close to being a partner. And basically dedicated myself to the Massive Bio and the mission of Massive Bio. I don't regret a second, but I have to admit that I was significantly underestimated the amount of challenge and the resilience that is required to build these kind of businesses.
Well, thank you so much, Selin, for sharing this part of your journey. So I'm now intrigued. You open for another question about all the challenges. It's quite a leap from engineering to healthcare, health tech, and all the complexities of clinical trial. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the challenges, how you're applying your problem-solving skills you've probably had as an engineer, and mainly your leadership aspect into this, because you're such a human-centered leader, and what you're doing is impacting patient at a really individual level of the toughest moments of their journey and stories. So I'd love to hear the hurdles, but also how you're applying and transitioning, and you transition to that word.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I'm a big advocate is that, you know, clinical operations right now mostly done by people who has a particular experience in how to execute clinical operations. But I think there are different disciplines, like engineering needs to be integrated in order to be able to work with clinical operations, because in the world of clinical operations, we're not really changing the clinical trial itself, but we are changing the enablers to make that clinical trial successful. And for that purpose, you need to be, of course, knowledgeable about the clinical trial process, but you still need to have other disciplines and the involvement of those disciplines in order to solve the patient recruitment problem to the clinical trial. And those are very systematic approach problems that you may not necessarily find in the DNA of clinical operations. In the DNA of clinical operations, everything has to be in the FDA regulatory framework. And there's a lot of complex processes that needs to be distilled. That creates the efficacy and the efficiency for the patient to have that safe environment to have that drug and go into the next year in their journey. And that requires a very nuanced subject matter expertise for the field. But patient recruitment, you have to find the patient, you have to pre-screen the patient, you have to do the last mile of that patient. That's not necessarily in that regulatory framework. And that is much less scripted, which means innovation-driven mindset in order to be able to solve those large-scale problems with very articulated, automated, and scalable manner. And that's what I am trying to play in advocacy, and I'm trying to marry engineering with clinical operations, because I see that the patient recruitment problem in the world of oncology is a problem that has been there for very, very long years. It's not that Massabai has invented that problem. And frankly, it is not even the top 20 pharma companies has invented that problem. That problem was always there for decades. But what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to bring a differentiated approach to solve a good old problem, maybe in a way that people haven't thought before. And I also want that problem solving methodologies to not only potentially adapt just for patient recruitment, every aspect of the patient journey that can be used to further accelerate an advancement of the drug development process. Because there is an individual patient clinical outcome improvement, but at the same time, we also wanted to go into the population level, learning from the previous journey of those patients and applying these, insights and learnings for the future drug development of the patients, so that those patients can get less impacted for some of the things that the previous patients has been impacted.
This is really impactful and meaningful, obviously, for patients. And at Massive Bio, you guys have been leveraging AI before it was or it became a thing right now.
Yes, it was before sexy and a thing, and we were using that, yeah.
Yeah, so you're using it and really to solve, as you said, like one of the oldest and probably one of the most complex problems, which is clinical trial access and enrollment. And really, we know in oncology, but also in other diseases, several times the clinical trial is the best option for patients to get the most novel therapies. And sometimes patients, unfortunately, don't know that. And you've been solving for that, 160,000 patients, as I said in the beginning. So can you tell us a little bit more what you're doing differently and how you're thinking about it? I heard you say about the patient journey and trying to solve for it. I'm hearing also some predictability work for you to be able, for the future patients, not to live what the first patients are living. But tell us a little bit more from a tangible, how are you doing a tangible difference for patients? Because I know you do.
Sure. So let me give you the more like the foundationally how we're different. Then I'm also going to focus more on the AI aspect and how that AI is actually creating the outcomes for the patients. So in terms of the differences, first and foremost, we are oncology and hematology dedicated company. So we are not in different disease types. We are the people in the world of cancer. Unfortunately, cancer is so difficult and challenging, and I think you cannot serve to multiple masters at this point in time. We only serve to one master, and that master is very difficult to, unbundle because cancer is always very strong, unfortunately, relative to the humankind. So that's one. And then the second thing is that we're looking at this thing at global scale because there's a lot of companies, trying to do this thing at a US level, some section of the US, which is important. But in order to be able to create real impact, you need to be in the world of the top 20 pharma because they have fairly large scale clinical trials that impacts very large amount of patients. And in order to be able to get into the map of these guys, you absolutely need to work globally. The second aspect is that, when pharma companies are looking for these inclusion exclusion criteria, they're looking at very, particular patient populations, like patients that they look for first line, second line, and above. And the way how you find a first line patient is very different than how you find a patient from, second line and above. If it's a first line non-small cell lung cancer, you need to go into a pulmonologist. But if it's a second line and above, you can go to the good old medical oncologist. So you should have that flexibility and adaptability to work with different patient acquisition channels. Because if you're a company just working with certain EMR integrations, you are very limited with the set of those. And then it's very impossible almost to get back and then go into the direct to patient. So you need to have that flexibility. And thirdly, which I'm also going to consolidate with the artificial intelligence, you need to do this thing for the entire steps in the value chain because there are 3 different sections in the patient enrollment value chain. There is a patient identification. There is in the middle, master pre-screening. And then the third bucket is the last mile concierge enrollment. These are each 3 pieces of the puzzle. If you do not do a good job in any of them, the deal is off. The challenge is to be equally successful in 3 of them, where each of them is more like a Nobel Prize level difficulty problems. And it's hard to get everything in order. In terms of the AI, there are 3 layers of AI that we use. The first one is this master pre-screening. What that means is the following. When you wanted to get pre-screened for a clinical trial, it takes about 25 minutes in order for manually a nurse to pre-screen you for a single trial with your medical records or any of the detailed clinical information that you have. Given that we have 14,000 actively recruiting, and with some information, it's even 19,000 actively recruiting oncology clinical trials at clinicaltrials.gov, that equates to 8.09 months for a patient to get pre-screened for all these trials. And if you are a patient at a very rapidly, progressing, subtype of cancer, that is completely unacceptable. So that 8.09 months need to be reduced to days, if not minutes. And that's what we are trying to do, to use the artificial intelligence to structure the medical information of the patient, to structure the molecular diagnostic testing of the information, plus to structure all the inclusion-exclusion criteria that we receive at clinicaltrials.gov. And if we have protocols from pharma, wonderful. We also integrate that so that we do that mass matchmaking at scale to reduce the amount of time, maybe by 99%, so that we can get to that patient real time, that these are the options for you to participate. So that's kind of one application. And what is in it for the patient? The patient sits down in their living room. They don't lose time. They don't lose money. And they have a peace of mind to understand what is the right trial for them so that they can activate their clinical trial enrollment process by being their own advocate. Because you work collaboratively with your physician, but 50% of the physicians don't even talk about a clinical trial. Maybe intentionally, not intentionally. They don't have the time in a lot of the cases. But as a patient, you can activate that process by yourself, which is like very important for me. And when you activate that, massive bio is become your complementary nature of for you to operationalize that activation. The second part is this, cancer patient's journey, there has to be some level of prediction in that cancer patient journey. If you're a multiple myeloma patient, the progression takes a lot of time, and you really need to predict when is going to be the next progression in that patient's journey, when the next M spike value is going to come to a level that I can predict that you're going to be you're going to have the progression, and how to engage with the patient based on their clinical journey and what is the best time to intervene for a clinical trial. Because it's not about you have multiple myeloma and there's like thousands of clinical trials for multiple myeloma. Are you at the right timing in your disease stage and your clinical criteria? And that's where AI helps for us to identify that perfect timings to intervene and work with the patient. So that's the kind of the second aspect of the leverage artificial intelligence. The third aspect, there is also a lot of supply chain work that we do in the last mile. We do a lot of patient engagement. We do a lot of provider engagement. We develop all these applications with different chatbots that they basically sometimes work with agentic AI in order to be able to engage. If you're a patient, you have to be able to understand how many clinical trials options that you have, when is the next, because there are three outcomes of the clinical trial journey. You are either fully eligible to at least one trial, which is wonderful, and then you moved into this last mile process. The second one is that you may be fully ineligible. You may be very late stage in the game, that we have to look for other options for that patient. And then the third option, which is typically the 80% of the patients, they're in the middle. They're not ineligible, but they're not fully eligible either. So they are partially eligible, which we call those patients are the patients in the virtual wait list. What that means is that that patient's medical information needs to be received. And after receiving those medical information at certain intervals, then we determine if the eligibility has been insured or not insured. And in that journey, those patients has to be engaged. Having an applications, use of artificial intelligence that automates and scale that patient engagement. Having an application that activates the physician for pre-screening their patients for referral to another site. Those are all the beauty of AI. So that an individual patient can activate themselves, an individual physician can activate themselves, so that we are not restricted by the structural issues of the healthcare ecosystem. And that's where AI can support. But keep in mind that in the world of healthcare, as you are also the master on this, just AI is not helpful. AI needs to be integrated with the workflow, and it needs to be invisible. And then AI also needs to be supported with these high value added customer services. So for example, in our last mile services, we refer the patient to a site and set up the screening appointment. Yes, there is some kind of a component that runs in the background, but there's still an interaction that is needed. If the clinical research coordinator at the site doesn't open the phone, I need to have a nurse that calls that clinical research coordinator to convince that appointment needs to be received 2 days from now as opposed to 23 days from now. And that customer support and high value added service also needs to be integrated in the world of healthcare to have a really material impact how this AI needs to be felt in the daily life of humankind.
Yeah, and this is, it's incredible what you're doing and what you're solving for. I love how you're bringing it. We always use like use cases, etc. for AI are more important than all the hype around the terms. But really, here you're going again from the core of what you do and your mission of improving those patient journeys and making sure patients get the best treatment options. And if it's a clinical trial, it's through clinical trials for you. and you're solving each part of them. Like those last examples you gave, it's real issues, like today to even set an appointment. So really using the best tools for you to be able to pre-screen, to select, to get the patient in front of their sites, and investigators are really great to be able to do it. So I'd love now to go back on things you touched in the beginning, building the company, from an idea to now having hundreds of thousands of patients impacted. Your company grew. I think you're more than 80 people in the company.
We are 88 people working in 17 countries.
Wow. And so tell me, how did this go? How did you scale your vision, and how do you keep it now and keep your people grounded in this mission you believed in when you started the company, now that it's grown to 88 people?
Well, I think the first thing is resilience. Because if there are 100 words that I hear on a given day, 99 of them is no. So if I basically run my life with no's, I had to shut down the company in 2 weeks. So this is a very challenging journey, and you need to be uber resilient to move forward the next day, assuming nothing has happened in the previous day and you haven't punched in the face. So that is very, very important. The second thing is that you need to have the right co-founders and the right team. Because, although, I've been talking to you in here, I won't be talking to you in here if this level of success has not been generated with all the people that I have. So you need to believe in it, and you have to make sure that the other people around you has to believe in it. And I think there's an easy way to solve that, because you can talk everything, and then say, I believe in it, I believe in it. But if you're not the hardest working in the team to do it by yourself, to show it, to work on it, to sweat on it, people are not going to believe in you, or people are not going to believe in just the words. So you have to also show it. If something is very difficult, put yourself into that very difficult situation. So when the team sees that, you as the founder at 2 a.m. trying to fix something, then people respect you and they start to do as well. So you cannot do this thing, in my famous verbiage, you cannot do this thing in your fingertips. You have to really immerse yourself into the situation. And then the third thing is that you need to have early adopters from a customer standpoint, as well as ecosystem standpoint, because you can kill yourself. But if nobody is adapting, then that's also very challenging. And keep in mind that convincing this large pharma for these new approaches is monumentally difficult, because their process is very long. They always look for very quantifiable metrics to say, because they get a lot of options, so they have to filter out which option is the right option, not option. But there is nothing in the world that has become a sensation, not in an overnight sensation, but even a sustainable sensation, without having certain level of infrastructure and investment, especially in the world of healthcare. This doesn't happen overnight. So finding those people that believes in it and working with those people are significantly important. I have all these people in these fairly large pharma companies. I know who to call. I know who to cry in front. I know who to fight this thing for me, because these people know that it requires time, investment, and a lot of challenging days, and you need to have people on the pharma side that's an advocate of you internally and championing your company inside pharma, because I'm basically thinking that those champions are probably getting a lot of inertia and resistance even internally to fight for these stuff, but those forward-looking people are bringing the field forward, and you need to have some of them.
Yeah, and 100%. And when you're saying about fighting, crying, again, I think you're grounded. And as of those folks in biotech and pharma, we're all grounded and we do this and we fight because we want a better health for patients and trying to fix the health equity issues that we face. I want to move now to giving you a word, and I would love your first reaction to it. I feel I know the first reaction to the first word, but I'm going to try it still. The first one is leadership.
Very important.
What about clinical trials?
My heart, I guess, right now.
Women in health tech.
Challenging.
Oh, I want to know more now.
Yeah, because the thing is that even if you're in the United States, which is one of the world's most forward-looking countries and one of the most wealthiest countries, you still get gender biases, especially for in the women in healthcare, because everyone wants to see the women in healthcare in junior positions. But there are not a lot of people that want to see women in healthcare in senior positions and the very significant decision-making levels. And that is problematic because you actually have more resistance the more move up that you go. When you are more junior, when you have less decision-making power, people don't see you as a threat. And you don't get a lot of, resistance, ocean level. But then the more that you go up, the more decision-making power that you have, the more you become a potential threat to the mankind, then you start to get a lot of reactions. And sometimes you get reactions that you don't even know where that reaction is coming from. But then you started to peel that. But no matter how the difficult is, I always try not to take it personally. So because if you take it personally, it will go nowhere. I try to not to take it personally, and try to digest it, but not dwell on it too much. And also, understand the aspect is that life is not fair. And I'm not, seeking for fairness in life, but I am seeking for success in the unfairness of life. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, I love this framing. And we certainly moved forward, but not enough. I'm 100% with you, and yeah, it's good to see how far we've went, but it's a journey, and we can see we can go backwards, but there's still a lot to go forward for. So
for sure,
the last one is spread love in organizations.
Well, I think that spreading love should be the democratic, and that love has to be spread to every level, to every person. It needs to be a true meritocracy in that sense. And as a founder, I honestly don't believe in titles, frankly. So, to me, the most junior person and the most inexperienced person is literally the same as to me, the most senior and the flashiest title in the organization. It's all about sharing the same mission. And, titles and all that stuff comes with time and all that stuff. If you're 21, it's not your mistake. You're just starting. So the important thing is that, do you have the business chemistry with that other person? Do you share the common mission? And can you complement each other? I have my skill set. The other person has their own skill set. Can you kind of basically bring that harmony together to create the best outcome? And, if you look at in my organization, we're very flat. We don't have you can't talk to the CEO in this time, that time, this restrictions and all that stuff. It's just everyone has my, cellular phone number. They can call anytime, any hour for any issue. We're very open.
I love this view of organizations and how you're framing it. Any final word of wisdom, Selin, for healthcare leaders around the world?
Well, I'm going to steal from what I've said. Resilience is key. Being invisible in the world of healthcare, if you try to, impose a particular innovation and change, get ready for capital misallocation, because the way how the healthcare dollars are spent are not necessarily the places where the actual outcomes are generated. And fourth, enjoy the ride. So I think no matter how complicated and challenging and everything it is, I think the way how I look at it, and when I wake up in the morning, is my family healthy? Is the team intact? That's it. So other than that, I don't have a lot of, objective functions for the day.
Well, it's a great reminder, and you started with resilience. It's a great reminder also how to keep ourselves grounded as leaders. Especially, again, you're super humble in the way you're doing, but what your company did when we talk about hundreds of thousands of patients who are now doing better thanks to the work you've done and your partnership with a lot of people in the ecosystem, because I also see you as a connector between all those people trying to serve patients. You're the one actually doing it from the beginning to the last mile, as you call it. So thank you again for being with me today. It's been a pleasure to talk again with you, and thanks for all your work you do with Massifio and all your team.
Thank you so much, Naji, for having me. This was a wonderful podcast, and I definitely look forward to speaking to you in the future ones as well.
Thanks for listening to the show. For more episodes, make sure to subscribe to spreadloveio.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Let's inspire change together and make a positive impact in healthcare, one story at a time.